Hong Kong was ranked the freest economy on Earth for 25 years in a row. Not the freest in Asia, the freest anywhere. In 2021, the Heritage Foundation dropped it from its rankings, not to a lower position, removed it, reclassified as part of China, which scores 107th. A 78-year-old man named Jimmy Lai is in a prison cell right now. He is serving 20 years for publishing a newspaper. His sentence runs until he is 98. On a single day in 2019, 2 million people marched through Hong Kong's streets, 1 in every 4 residents of the city. No city anywhere in the world had seen a protest that large relative to its size. That was 7 years ago. Jimmy Lai's newspaper is closed. His editors are in prison. Every seat in Hong Kong's legislature now belongs to a pro-Beijing candidate. In 1984, Britain and China signed a treaty. Both nations registered it at the United Nations. China promised 50 years, free press, free courts, free assembly, the right to protest, the right to publish. That treaty is still registered at the United Nations today. Beijing now calls it a historical document with no legal force. The 2 million people marched anyway. This is how 50 years became 23. In December 1984, Margaret Thatcher and Chinese Premier Zhao signed a document. It was called the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Britain was handing Hong Kong back after 156 years of colonial rule. China was promising what came next. The promise had a name. One country, two systems. Deng Xiaoping coined it. Hong Kong would return to Chinese sovereignty, but its way of life would stay the same for 50 years. Free press, independent courts, the right to protest, the right to vote. Both governments registered the declaration at the United Nations, not as a letter of intent, as a binding international treaty. It came into force on July 1st, 1997, midnight. Prince Charles stood in the rain at the Hong Kong Convention Center. Governor Chris Patten wept on the steps of Government House. The British flag came down. Jiang Zemin watched the Chinese flag go up. 7 million people were now under Beijing's sovereignty. The treaty said nothing would change for 50 years. The numbers backed the claim. The Heritage Foundation ranked Hong Kong the freest economy on Earth in 1995. It held that position every year after. By 2002, Reporters Without Borders ranked it 18th globally for press freedom. Its courts ran on British common law. Judges came from Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom. It was a city that had built itself into something extraordinary. And the treaty said, keep it exactly as it is until 2047. The clock started at midnight on July 1st, 1997. It had already started stopping. The first test came in 2003. Article 23 of the Basic Law had always been a problem. It required Hong Kong to pass its own national security law. The legislature finally tried. Its proposed bill could ban seditious publications, outlaw treason, and allow warrantless searches. On July 1st, 2003, 6 years after the handover, 500,000 people marched through Hong Kong. Legislators shelved the bill 5 weeks later. One country, two systems held. Barely. Then came 2014. Beijing announced it would allow Hong Kongers to vote for their own leader. The catch? All candidates had to be pre-screened and approved by Beijing first. In practice, that meant no candidate Beijing disapproved of could ever appear on the ballot. The umbrella movement began on September 28th. Protesters occupied 3 major districts. Umbrellas against pepper spray, they stayed for 79 days. Nothing was conceded. The pre-screening requirement stayed. The following year, the booksellers vanished. 5 publishers connected to a Hong Kong bookshop disappeared in late 2015 and early 2016. Their books were critical of Beijing's leadership. One was taken from Thailand, another from mainland China. Libo was different. He vanished from inside Hong Kong itself without passing any border checkpoint on record. Weeks later, he reappeared in mainland custody. Chinese agents had operated on Hong Kong soil. No one was charged. No one explained how. The Basic Law promised that could never happen. By 2019, Reporters Without Borders had dropped Hong Kong from 18th in press freedom to 73rd. The Heritage Foundation still ranked it number 1 for economic freedom. Those two numbers were moving in opposite directions. The gap between what was promised and what was happening was widening, slowly, then faster. In February 2019, Chief Executive Carrie Lam introduced a new extradition bill. It was straightforward on paper. Suspects wanted by mainland China could be transferred to face trial there. Mainland courts, mainland prosecutors, mainland verdicts. Hong Kong's legal community reacted first. Lawyers, judges, and business people saw the same problem. Once a person crossed that border, Hong Kong's protections no longer applied. The mainland's conviction rate in criminal cases sits above 99%. On June 9th, organizers counted 1 million people marching through Hong Kong, the largest protest since 1997. Hong Kong had 7 million residents, 1 in 7 marched. Lam called the bill essential. She did not withdraw it. On June 16th, 2 million people came back, 1 in every 4 residents of the city, the same streets, the same demand: kill the bill. The movement had no leaders. This was intentional. Be water, they said. Bruce Lee's philosophy: formless, adaptable, impossible to arrest at the top. Coordination happened on Telegram. Decisions were made by consensus. When police showed up in one district, protesters dissolved and reformed somewhere else. They named 5 demands: full withdrawal of the bill, retract the riot designation for protesters already arrested, an independent inquiry into police conduct, release all arrested protesters, and genuine universal suffrage. On September 4th, Lam withdrew the bill. 1 demand met. 4 remained. The protests continued. November 17th, police surrounded the Polytechnic University campus. Students barricaded themselves inside. The siege lasted 12 days. Officers arrested 1,377 people. Inside, protesters had stockpiled more than 4,000 petrol bombs. By the time the protests subsided, 10,279 people had been arrested. 5 demands. 1 had been met, 4 had not, and something much larger was coming. June 30th, 2020, 11 p.m. The national security law came into force 1 hour before the handover anniversary. Most Hong Kongers saw the full text for the first time after it was already law. Beijing had drafted it in secret. The National People's Congress Standing Committee wrote it behind closed doors. It bypassed Hong Kong's legislature entirely. No vote was cast in the city. The law was added to an annex of the Basic Law and took effect immediately. It defined 4 offenses: secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. Maximum sentence for each: life in prison. Then came Article 38. The law applies to everyone on Earth, not just Hong Kong residents, not just Chinese nationals, everyone. Post something from London that Beijing considers collusion, and you are technically in violation. Enter any jurisdiction that cooperates with China, and you are at risk. The next morning, Tong Ying Kit left for work. He was 23 years old, a motorcycle delivery driver. He attached a flag to his bike. The flag read, "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times." A protest slogan. Police arrested him at 3 p.m. He became the first person charged under the new law. No jury heard his case. On July 30th, 2021, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Tong Ying Kit was the first. He would not be the last. August 10th, 2020. 500 police officers arrived at the Apple Daily newsroom before dawn. Jimmy Lai founded the paper in 1995. At its peak, 500,000 people bought it every day. It was tabloid in format. It was not tabloid in ambition. For 25 years, it had covered Hong Kong's government critically, directly, without apology. Lai was 72 when they walked him out in handcuffs. He had been expecting it. His bank accounts were frozen in June 2021. Apple Daily could no longer pay its staff. On June 24th, it printed its final edition. 1 million copies, 10 times its normal print run. Readers lined up before dawn. The front page read, "Hong Kongers, stay strong." It sold out before sunrise. December 29th, 2021. More than 200 officers raided Stand News, another independent outlet. They arrested senior staff. Stand News shut immediately. 6 days later, Citizen News announced it was closing. No raid required, no police at the door. The message had already arrived. January 6, 2021, 47 pro-democracy politicians and activists were arrested. Their crime, organizing an unofficial primary election to coordinate which candidates would run against the government. In May 2024, a verdict came. 45 of the 47 were found guilty. In November, Benny Tai, a law professor who helped organize the primary, received 10 years. Joshua Wong received 4 years and 8 months. Jimmy Lai had been in custody since December 31st, 2020. His trial lasted years. On December 15th, 2025, he was convicted. On February 9th, 2026, he was sentenced. 20 years, the longest sentence handed down under the national security law. He was 78 years old. Overseas judges on Hong Kong's Court of Final Appeal resigned one by one. 2 UK Supreme Court justices stepped down in March 2022. Their statements cited the national security law directly. What the courts had become, they would not legitimize. The paper was gone. The publishers were in prison, the judges had left. Now, so did everyone else. Before the handover, Britain gave Hong Kong residents a travel document, not a passport, a British national overseas card. BNO holders could travel on it. Living in the UK was not permitted. On January 31st, 2021, the UK changed that. BNO holders could now apply for residency, the right to work, study, and eventually become British citizens. By June 2024, more than 150,000 people had moved to the United Kingdom under that scheme. Total applications, 191,000. The scheme is still open. Those were only the British numbers. Canada, Australia, and other countries ran parallel programs. The total emigration from 2020 to 2024 is estimated at more than 300,000. In a city of 7 million, that is 1 in every 23 people, over 4 years. These were not random departures. Lawyers left, doctors left, journalists left. Hong Kong lost more than 4,500 students and 1,000 teachers in a single year. The people who left were the ones with the most to lose from staying. Hong Kong's financial center did not collapse. The GFCI still ranked it among the top 3 in the world, but the IPO market told a different story. In 2023, companies raised $5.7 billion in Hong Kong listings. That was the weakest performance since 1999. A 24-year low, the election held in December 2021 showed what remained. A legislature of 90 seats. 20 were directly elected. All 90 went to pro-Beijing candidates. Turnout was the lowest since 1997. The election was technically legal. Every candidate had been vetted for patriotism. One country, one system. 50 years promised, 23 delivered. On July 1st, 2022, Xi Jinping flew to Hong Kong. It was the 25th anniversary of the handover. He stood at the same convention center where the flag went up in 1997. His words, "There is no reason to change such a good system." 2 years later, Beijing's top official on Hong Kong affairs made it permanent. One country, two systems, would be kept beyond 2047. The 50-year promise, it turned out, had no expiration date. Jimmy Lai is in a prison cell. He will not be eligible for release until he is in his late 90s. The newspaper he built over 30 years is gone. Collectors pay high prices for a copy of the final edition. Libraries in London, Toronto, and Sydney keep them under glass. The Joint Declaration is still registered at the United Nations. Beijing calls it a historical document with no practical significance. Both things are true simultaneously, and no one has resolved the contradiction. Hong Kong's press freedom ranking in 2026, 141st out of 180 countries. It sits in the red zone, the category reserved for the most repressive press environments on Earth. The Heritage Foundation dropped Hong Kong from its Economic Freedom Index in 2021, not to a lower position, removed it entirely, reclassified as part of China. China ranks 107th. 2 million people once marched through those streets. The 5 demands became 0. Now the streets are quiet. In 1984, 2 governments made a promise in writing. They signed it. They registered it at the United Nations. It was supposed to last 50 years. It lasted 23. The clock still reads 2047. It does not mean what it used to. Beijing ended one country, 2 systems in Hong Kong without firing a shot and without meaningful international consequence. Watch how China used the same patient incremental strategy to build 3,200 acres of military bases from submerged coral reefs in the South China Sea, defying a unanimous international court ruling and a personal pledge from Xi Jinping, and got away with that too. Watch, China built islands, put missiles on them, and got away with it.